Well, it's time now for another film school with our good friend Dr. Joe Fortunato here on 93.5, 1590 WAKR. And Joe, we're going back in time. And I was telling you just a couple of moments ago, going back to the early 80s, what I think is just a really funny movie. And I'll kind of let you take it from there, Joe. Go right ahead.
It really is. This is one of the classics of my era, Gen X era, one of the great comedies of that time. Stripes from 1981. You know, we've looked at a lot of movies recently from 1980, 81. Boy, there's a lot of great movies during that period of time. This one came out in June of 1981, so it's celebrating its 45th anniversary this week, or this month, or this year, I should say. It was directed by the great Ivan Reitman, who's sadly no longer with us, written by Len Bloom, David Goldberg, and Harold Ramis. It stars Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, John Candy, Warren Oates, and a bunch of other people in lesser roles. It did very well budget-wide. It was the fifth most popular 1981 movie in the U.S. and the Canadian box office, so it did very well at the box office. And surprisingly, the U.S. Army was actually very helpful and cooperative during the filming, which really surprised the director Ivan Reitman, since the script depicts the military as being largely made up of buffoons. So they were kind of surprised that the military was very helpful in this. In terms of, I'll talk a little bit more about casting in a moment, but in terms of some of the main casting, Bill Murray insisted that Harold Ramis be cast as his friend for two reasons. One, they were longtime friends in real life, and two, he wanted Ramis to help rewrite dialogue as the movie was going on. So that was the main reason that Harold Ramis actually got that job. The cast improvises most all of their dialogue in several sequences, especially when they're sitting around telling all their backstories to Sergeant Hulka. This is all improvised dialogue. That includes Bill Murray's line about Lee Harvey making it with a cow and calling Sergeant Hulka a big toe. That's all improvised. And a lot of times Warren Oates couldn't keep his composure while he was hearing all that. So sometimes we cut away and we get a little smirk from Sergeant Hulka during that. Also, during the scene where the recruits are receiving their basic training haircuts, he didn't tell the actors that real Army barbers would be shaving their heads until the scene was being shot. So he lined up all the actors. They shot the scene as scripted to get their genuine reactions as their head was being shaved. And again, fans of the movie will recall John Candy especially looking depressed after his scene was shot, and he's picking up his hair and looking at it sadly and longingly as they walk out of the barbershop. So the only ones that kind of escaped that were Bill Murray and Harold Ramis themselves. Being the stars, they got to keep a little bit more of their hair intact. So they were told about that.
When you talk about Bill Murray in this movie, this was at the height, right? You got Meatballs and you have Ghostbusters and this one. I mean, he
And
was all
Caddyshack.
really on a roll in Caddyshack. Yeah, he was really on a roll at this time of his career.
Yeah, he definitely was. And, as another scene that was kind of made up on the spot was the mud wrestling scene. And John Candy was kind of uncomfortable. John Candy was sadly, uncomfortable with his size in movies. And so Reitman had to talk him into that. If you ever watch the John Candy documentary streaming, it's on one of those streamers, but they talk
Hmm.
about that. So it's a little bit of an unfortunate thing, but he made it work because John Candy is so great. There's also a 9-minute sequence which was filmed in which John and Russell take LSD and accidentally end up on a mission in the Colombian jungle. Now, Columbia Pictures thought this was the best scene in the film, but Ivan Reitman didn't like it and deleted it because he didn't think it fit the film's tone. I kind of agree with him, but it's out there on DVD extras. It might even be on YouTube if you want to check it out. Another thing that happened during the production of this was John Lennon was assassinated, and so the cast really kind of got hit by that, and they just spent a couple of weeks getting drunk after hearing of John Lennon's death. Um, talking about some casting. I mentioned a little bit of casting earlier. Harold Ramis, like I said, was initially reluctant to play the role of Russell, and Dennis Quaid auditioned for the role. But again, I told you Bill Murray was adamant about Ramis playing the role. Anyway, Quaid was married at the time to co-star PJ Soles, who was Bill Murray's girlfriend in the movie. And Quaid would appear uncredited as an extra in the background. The film was originally, believe it or not, conceived as a vehicle for Cheech and Chong. And so Ivan Reitman stated that that's another reason that that fell through is because Cheech and Chong's manager insisted that Reitman give up a 25% share of his next five films, which is kind of ridiculous, and he wasn't going to do that for anything. Um, there's so many little tidbits here, but another little Easter egg, I guess, for lack of a better word, we'll call it there. And I
Sure.
love when things happen like this, when there's synergy between movies. Near the, everyone remembers sort of at the end of the film, probably on the credits, they have magazine covers that show where all the
Yeah.
stars or all the characters have gone on to. Well, at the end of that, John Larroquette, who played Captain Stillman, it says on his magazine that he was transferred to the Arctic Command. Now, this is later referenced in an episode of Night Court, which of course was his hit TV show in the 80s, in which Dan Fielding, his character, reveals that he is a captain in the U.S. Army, and by the end of the episode, his commanding officer orders him to be transferred to duty in the Arctic Circle, just like it says in that thing. So, in some ways, Night Court and Stripes are in the same universe, and I find that kind of amusing.
I love that too. That as much as I enjoyed Bill Murray in the movie, and he was just terrific as well as the other funny parts, I was one that was longing, and I'm not sure about his on-screen time, but Sergeant Holka to me was so good in this movie, and it was more what quality over quantity when he was on screen.
Yeah, and Warren Oates is a great actor. I mean, he's done so many great things, in his career. And so the regular cast was kind of in awe of working with him because to them,
Mm.
he was kind of a legendary actor. And he was impressive in doing comedy. He had to play it straight a lot of the time, but he really knocked it out of the park. This was whole part of like a whole mini cycle. We talked about movies of that era, kind of a mini cycle. When we talk about cycles, these sort of movies that are all kind of similar plotted or whatever. During the early 80s, centering around military cadet training, we had serious movies like Taps. We had comedies like Stripes and Private Benjamin and Up the Academy and Lords of Discipline, Officer and a Gentleman. So both comedies and straight, dramas, there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on there. And then even in the later 80s, we saw things like Biloxi Blues and Heartbreak Ridge and Full Metal Jacket and stuff. So it kind of goes in with all that cycle in the 80s of military themed cadet training movies.
It certainly is worth a rewatch and certainly a lot of chuckles with it when you talk about Stripes. That's our film school this week with Dr. Joe Fortunato. Joe, anything you'd like to talk about what you're doing and maybe the website and beyond?
Well, we just finished up a great event last week at Jilly's doing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I want to thank everybody who came out for that. We will be doing another one at Jilly's November 7th. Now, that seems like a ways off, and it is, but maybe be sure to mark your date, your calendar, and we are going to be doing Rocky. It's the
Mm.
50th anniversary of Rocky this year, so we're going to be doing Rocky. I haven't done that one in Ohio ever, so that's a good thing to mark your calendar for. But just go to my website, joefortunato.net, and see what else is going on. I'll have a lecture at the Green Branch Library in October, so things are a little farther off, but always a good idea to go to joefortunato.net and check it out and save the dates.
Always good, my friend. Well done again. Stripes this week with Dr. Joe Fortunato. Joe will do it again next week with Film School. Thanks, my friend.
Look forward to it. See you then.